terms here. Just a few more things to wrap this session up. Some tactical considerations for marketing cattle. These relate to different market channels that we have to choose to actually affect the marketing of these cattle, changing ownership. Part of it is shrink and weighing conditions. Obviously, if you haul cattle to the local auction, the cattle incur some shrink physically, so the weight at the sale is going to be different than the weight they were leaving the ranch in many cases, but it's an obvious process. It is what it is. The cattle are weighed as they're sold, so there's relatively few questions about that. It gets trickier if you forward sell cattle or forward contract cattle because you have to agree on these details, and these details can be very important about how shrink will be handled, if it will be actual shrink or some sort of pencil adjustment, pencil shrink, or some combination of the two. How the weighing conditions, how the weighing will be done and where it will be done and so on. Also part of this is the price slide, which relates to, particularly for forward sales of cattle, how the price will be adjusted if the weight of the animals is in fact different than what you base them on when you made the forward sale. We don't know exactly what these cattle are going to weigh if they're forward priced. It comes from that same price-weight relationship that we looked at for the value of gain. It's the same idea. This is an average, again, of prices over a long period of time. And you can see how much that price is changing through each 50-pound increment of weight here. And so you get the dollar value of that change, or on a cents per pound basis. What this is saying is when these animals are very light, in the 400 to 500 pound range, we've got about a 15 cents a pound price adjustment for every additional pound. A better way to think about that is to think about it in percentage terms. And basically what you get is for lightweight calves, certainly up to 500 or 525 pounds, you're going to use about a 10% price slide. At bigger weights, that price slide in percentage terms will decrease. And then it levels out here in the 4.5% to 5% range at bigger weights. Now, what do we mean by a 10% slide? If at, say, 450 pounds is your base weight to sell these cattle, and I'm going to use simple numbers here, at $1 a pound, a 10% slide would suggest that there's a 10 cent a pound adjustment. So if the animals come in weighing 110 pounds or 120 pounds instead of, they come in weighing 10 or 20 pounds heavier than the base weight you agreed on, then you would adjust the price per pound according to that 10-cent slide. The implication of a percent slide, though, is if the price is higher at $2 a pound, it would not be a 10-cent slide on these calf prices, it would be a 20-cent slide. And we've seen that in the last few years as we went through these dramatically volatile prices and different price levels over time. So price slides are an important component of forward pricing cattle. It's something that you have to understand a little bit and get that right. Finally, just a couple of comments on marketing channels. Again, you've got local or regional auctions that you can sell cattle. Those are straightforward. They have commissions. The cattle will incur some shrink. The weighing conditions are given. They're obvious. You can sell video auctions, which has the combination of an auction buyer base, actually a broader buyer base, because people from all over the country can be looking at those cattle. So you've got the advantages of the auction and the advantages of selling them directly off the ranch and avoiding some of the shrink and handling associated with hauling cattle to auction. The cattle only move once directly from the ranch to the buyer at an agreed on time. Disadvantage, of course, is that you're doing it ahead of time, and so you're forward pricing these cattle. Again, you've got those details of exactly figuring out what they're going to weigh, how to base the contract, and then how to specify shrink and weighing conditions and the price slide adjustments that might be necessary. You can sell directly from the ranch if you can find a buyer and contact them directly, and that's that's a possible way to do it as well. So if you think about some of those tactical considerations of what you're trying to do when you're marketing cattle, obviously part of that process is to establish price for the cattle. That may be done solely in the cash market part of it, or it may be done with some sort of risk management tool combined with the physical marketing of these cattle. And then there's the questions of transferring the ownership in terms of when did the the ownership change legally in terms of forward contracting these cattle or that sort of thing, and physically, when do you actually transfer the ownership. So if you look at the different marketing alternatives, you see that these different components take place in different ways. If you do a cash market, everything happens right now. You establish price, you figure out who's going to get them, and they take them home that same day. And so the cash market, everything is right now. With a video auction, it's similar. You establish price today, you know who's going to get them, but the transfer of ownership is going to take place later, much like a forward contract, because in both cases you're selling these cattle prior to the actual delivery date. With a futures hedge, you're going to establish price now, or at least an approximate price, but you won't know exactly who's going to get them because you're going to sell the cattle later in some cash market venue, and of course you'll transfer the ownership later as well. So that sets up a different module that goes into more detail specifically on how the futures hedge works as a risk management tool that you would combine with the cash market considerations that we're considering in this particular module. And one last bit, just a couple of quick comments about marketing cull cows. We've talked mostly about calves. For most cow-calf operations, 15 to 20% of their total revenue comes from cull cows and bulls, cull cows in particular. And so it's worth giving some thought to those. We tend to treat those cows as just kind of something to move on as quickly as possible once we check those cows, make our culling decisions. We just want to get rid of them. But there are reasons to think about whether we should sell them immediately, particularly in the fall if they're coming in thin. We wean the calves off, we check the cows, they're not pregnant, or they have physical problems that make it necessary to cull those animals. Do we want to sell them right away? Or think about maybe putting a little bit of weight on them. One of the things to consider is the fact that they're a good way to utilize sometimes excess feed resources we have that maybe don't have a better use, and it's a way to add value to some leftover hay or perhaps some leftover dry forage or something. So, and again, seasonal patterns matter. In fact, cows, relative to the feeder cattle we looked at earlier, have the most exaggerated seasonal price pattern of all. They have a pronounced spring peak that occurs in April and May. They have a very pronounced low that occurs in the fall of the year because there is such a tendency for everybody to market those cull cows. So under certain conditions, it certainly makes sense to think about taking those cows from November at least over here into February or March, or potentially all the way out to, say, May. Those cows will gain weight typically, and this is a pretty strong seasonal pattern. Every one of those additional pounds, as well as the original pounds, will sell for more money. And in fact, if those cows were thin in the fall, very quite skinny, and they put on weight and they put on flesh, they will add at least a body condition score in this process, and they will bring more money because of that as well. So these cows can potentially add significant value, as well as being a way to utilize feed resources that perhaps don't have a better use at this point. That said, I think that's the end of this module. I thank you for your attention, and we will see you next time. Thank you.